Bonjour, hola, welcome on to the teams. I'm joined by my multilingual co-host, Letdog, expert of all things fantasy in Carlton. How are you doing, Letdog, and how are you doing, chat?
Guten Tag, Dan. Guten Tag. It's good to see you, mate. We're here for another episode of Teams. I'm excited. It's a big game this week, Dan. And we guaranteed the win last week, and we came away with it. So I think are we 3 from 4 or 2 from 3? Anyway, we've got a pretty good win record at the moment.
Yeah, we're not far off Voss's win rate at the moment when we guarantee a win. So I mean, it's 3-1. So we're in shot of finals as well. Obviously, this game is a big game. Probably, we know I love going into stereotypes. It's definitely an 8-pointer, isn't it? This one.
It is an 8-pointer, particularly given the percentage situation in the top 8. We've got a very low percentage, despite having quite a few wins on the board so far. So really important to try and build a gap between us and those around us this week.
Well, I mean, the statistical probability when you're 5-1, there's only a handful of teams who have failed to make finals. We were the last team to not make finals from 5-1. Your statistical probability is about the likelihood of Taylor Swift joining this show tonight of making finals. So it is a real big thing. So while we're here, give me your predictions. You guys in chat, as a few of you join. Good day to everyone. Good day to Angela. What do you expect to see in this team selection today?
Well, it's interesting. I don't expect to see a hell of a lot. I think quite a few people out there maybe have some misgivings about how some players perform. So there'll be quite a few names in chat, I'm sure, that of guys that they won't cut. But for me, Pommy, it's pretty much Cripps in, probably Setterfield out. If I'm being honest with you, I think there's been a bit of hype from the club as well about coming out around Motlop this week. So we'll see if he can find his way into the team, maybe for an O's. But I'm expecting minimal changes. How about you?
Well, I mean, we would have cracked the code if Motlop plays. We officially know Carlton released their team selection on a Wednesday by that video, doesn't he? Yeah. So it's going to be a worry. My gut is Setterfield out, Cripps in, and I think Voss looks like he's going to give guys 2 weeks of continuity, 3 weeks to build a bit of form. The Motlop one, though, is interesting because he is probably perfect based on his VFL form for Carlton because he is the antichrist of Jack Martin. You don't see him for 2 quarters, but you see him at the death. And that is Motlop's specialty. For the VFL, that guy doing his heat maps all season, I don't do anything to his heat map. And then suddenly, bang, I'm filling out his heat map rapidly. So he might be the answer to the third, fourth quarter prayers.
Well, we've talked about getting an impact player like him. We mentioned the other day that Jack Martin was potentially on the way out, although, and I'm going to toot my own horn here, I did say they'd leave him in because he creates scoring opportunities and he did get us off to a good start in Port. But like him, Motlop can come in and potentially be an impact player. Pom, worth noting, and we'll cover it when the teams do drop, but there's obviously going to be a hell of a lot of changes for Freo this week. It sounds like they've got quite a few people out with H&S protocols, out with COVID. So they will be a little unsettled, which hopefully is something we can use to our advantage, Pom.
Well, it's interesting as well because all the Freo guys that have been affected by, I'm going to call it COVID because H&S protocols is just Mickey Mouse, isn't it? Let's just call it what it is. But they are the number 1 transition side in the AFL. So very interesting because, to use a boxing analogy, because Pom's been living in boxing analogies for the last 2 weeks, I don't know what's wrong with me. Styles make fights, and this is a great matchup. It's Carlton's corridor-heavy, stoppage, centre-bound centric style versus a side that its one question mark is, can it score organically? And this year we've seen St Kilda, they managed to take that away from them. that was an issue for Fremantle against them. It's a question if they can score organically. And it's real funny because when you look at this, the COVID has affected their entire backline pretty much. They're all backline players where they're strong. I think this is going to be a really interesting game for another reason. And no one's talked about this. The last 3 weeks, we've played sides that traditionally kick our ass. So psychology-wise, these players are like, oh, no, not Port, not Hawthorn again, not Gold Coast. This is a team that no matter how often we try and lose, we don't lose to. So I think the pressure's all on Freo this game because they have never really gone into this game as heavy favourites. And looking at the bookies, it's theirs to lose. And I wouldn't want to play Carlton if I was Fremantle. They would be the only side 4th to 12th I wouldn't want to play. And Fremantle now, the pressure's on them.
Well, yeah, just look at it. The recent form, we've played them 4 times. Well, we've won the last 4 games we played against them. 3 of them home games for Freo. One of them a home game for us. And we know we seem to get over the line. We seem to do miraculous things. We've got their number for whatever reason. They've got guys out in the back line. Admittedly, some of the guys who are in form in their reserves are pretty decent backmen, and we'll see them come in this week. But I think it's really vital. You can see, as you talked about, this year when we've got ahead and teams have started coming for us, there's definitely some psychology there where the players in the Carlton lineup know that in the past they've lost, and they've probably lost a bit of confidence, gone into their shells, tried to play on the outside a lot more. Well, it's the opposite this week, as you said, because we find a way to beat this team of late, whether it's a goal after the siren from Jackie Nunes or a snap in the rain from Mark Murphy. We find a way to win, and I think that's going to be really, really important for such a big game. And it is a big game. And Pom, I won't be comfortable saying a game isn't a must-win game until about round 23 when we're locked into finals. Every game's a must-win game for us, and this one especially because of how tight the top of the ladder is at the moment.
Exactly, and this is an interesting one because one thing when you watch Fremantle play as well, it's a real beautiful game style. You've got to give Justin credit for what he's built there. They play to their strengths really well, but this is very similar game, in my opinion, to Hawthorn and to Gold Coast. There is a methodology to beat this side, and it's a great test for Carlton because one thing we've seen with Fremantle is they like to play fast, which then says to Carlton, stoppages are generally a sign of slowing the game down. As we know, it's a very common method to slow the game down, as was the pattern to beat Richmond, create lots of stoppages and slow the game down. This is going to be one of these things where who implements the game. And it's interesting because Fremantle is a big stat. They haven't lost a first quarter this year. Carlton, we know that's their strongest quarter. This game is really one of them games where you've got to impose yourself. And whichever side, it's going to be interesting because the cheer squad aren't flying up for this one because obviously in Australia it's the same price to travel to England as it is Perth. Yeah. I can't answer that. So it's going to be a home game and it's going to be a real partisan atmosphere. But we have got a saving grace. The WA fans, in my opinion, are some of the best Carlton fans, probably in the AFL for interstate teams. They're manic. So it's going to be really about quieting Fremantle's crowd down, getting us ahead early. And I reckon, I said it about Hawthorn, teams that counter-attack struggle to score organically. So that is where Carlton are going to have to look at. They used the ball too liberally against Hawthorn, allowed them back in. This is a game where really it's going to be, what have you two learned in training?
Yeah, I think, as you said, the start of the game is going to be vital for us. They've got some really dangerous tools, even with these outs. Sean Darcy's nothing to be trifled with, although he hasn't had a healthy season so far, and Mike Pitnet statistically certainly matches up, but he's still dangerous. Andrew Brayshaw, I imagine we're going to see Walsh and him run head-to-head together. I don't think there's going to be a tag, which previously we might have looked at an Ed Kerno to come in and tag him. So they've got some dangerous tools, and if they get into their forward line, they're the second highest scoring efficiency team this year, which is pretty remarkable given last year it was the thing that kept them from winning a lot of games was their inaccuracy in front of goals. So they certainly got some dangerous tools, and Matt Tabernard's in good form, kicked 7 last week. So I'm interested to see how the matchups drop. Pom, I've seen a few questions in the comments before we do get to the teams. I just want to gauge your thoughts on this question without notice. Everyone's worried about the fact that we almost lost a 50-point lead, Pom. I'm more interested in the ability to create a 50-point lead than the ability to defend one. I think people overrate how badly we defended the lead compared to how well we created it. I think getting 50 points up is really important to winning footy, regardless of how long you can sustain that. So if we could get 50 points up in the first quarter and a half this week, I think we'll be fine. What do you think? Are we focusing too much on the negatives, or am I being too positive?
I'm with you. For those who watched the Monday show, I had a bit of a rant about the media, about the culture of people talking about Carlton. I'll throw the stat up. There it is between our heads. There is our quarter by quarter and my thoughts on it. But genuinely, I think the big thing for Carlton is we're building a cake. We're building a football cake. And there's 10 pillars that genuinely statisticians look at to make AFL flag-winning teams. And the wonderful thing about Carlton is we were, out of 8 of them, we were ranked 16th, 17th, 18th last year for a lot of them being ball retention, them being effective disposals, disposal efficiency, scores from clearance, scores from stoppages. That was a big thing as well that Lee Matthews picked up on, how Carlton were fraudulent, he called us, because how can they have some of the best contested players in the AFL but not score and dominate from here? I think people are jumping ahead of the gun for me, that what you've seen in 5 games is Voss stabilise it. Teague was a big advocate of we end the game well, however, we don't start the game well. All top teams start the game well. It's how they impose it. If you have scoreboard pressure, that is the only P word that matters. So I'm with you. If we can get 50 points up, and I'll use another boxing analogy. You've got to imagine if you're boxing in a heavyweight title fight, it's a lot easier to go into the 12th round behind on points, knowing you're going to lose and swing for the fences and get lucky and catch a guy. But you'll always be wrote in the press, what a valiant effort. If you're the winner and you're winning on points and you happen to get knocked out by a bum in the 12th, all the press isn't about them 11 good quarters. It's about you couldn't win a fight from an unlosable position. So people forget Carlton's old side did that. They were fraudulent. All them Teague games, fraudulent. 9 out of 12 games of David Teague. In 2020, they were 30 points down. It was David King's big start or Drew Level at some point in the game to lose. Like, the fitness conversation is the most ridiculous conversation in AFL. Carlton aren't unfit. It's quite simple. Teams in this league can come back. And the problem is Carlton don't have a transitional game. If you watch Buckley this week, said the easiest thing in the world is the 3rd and 4th quarter is transition football. It naturally happens, and you can't teach transition football. It's a development of a system. So that's it. But, I mean, no one with a clue would say Carlton are unfit because the running numbers literally prove Carlton run just as much in the first 2 quarters as they do the second. The speed is high. It's nothing to do with fitness. It is literally to do with in-game management. And Buckley pretty much nailed that today. It's the first time I've heard Fox Sport nail something.
It's certainly an interesting conversation. I think it's pretty simple for me. I'd rather be looking at it than looking for it. So if I'm looking at a 50-point lead, watching it get smaller and smaller as the game goes on, that is a lot easier to stomach than what happened for the last couple of years where, sure, we'd come back from 30 points and get in front, and sometimes we'd win, but most of the time we wouldn't. And so far the results sort of speak for themselves.
Jeff O'Day here, this is a great point here. Carlton have the least rotations in the midfield. And I think that is where the impact comes. And it kind of alludes me to this conversation as well. This is why I don't think they're unfit. One thing with Carlton is they're playing aces in their place at the moment. We started to see Fisher rotate through the midfield, which was the first time we saw it this week, just gone. Carlton are starting to build that rotation. But it's not that they're unfit like here, that they don't apply pressure. The pressure acts are still high, absolutely high. Do you know what I mean? The running numbers are high. The problem is that look at the system, that what happens. When a team is manic, and the AFL, it's the easiest sport in the world to chase. You've got to remember, David Teague for 3 years got away with that. Teams showing effort towards the end, bringing it back under 50 points, valiant effort. That's a big difference because it's easy to do. That is easy to do. Carlton, literally, the numbers indicate it's a higher handball ratio. A higher handball ratio generally is a sign of a team panicking. It's also a sign that the same ball users get the ball as well. If you watch Carlton, Lewis Young was guilty in the third quarter. 6 handballs for no point to Doc because he was in a worry. So for me, it's a huge thing there that Carlton needs to learn a little bit of compromise with the system. And that will come. I thought Buckley was very good today, saying that it's a compromise, he called it. It's something that teams learn. But like Buckley was alluding to, Carlton haven't had a system. So you can't judge them in that aspect. This is something new to them. And you've got to remember, most of these sides have never won a game. They've only clung on to a game. Now they're starting to win. That's something we'll see. And this is a great test for them. A great test because these guys don't let up. Fremantle are very good.
Well, yeah, as you said, we're learning, right? We're still very much a learning club. I know we're a long way into this rebuild, and I know there was bumps along the way, but we're a learning club. And the idea that we should be this super advanced, locked-in finals team, for me, I'd love it to be true, but for me, it's just not at this stage. We need to learn the system. We need to get more used to the system. And we talked about it off air, Pom, the other day. The Gold Coast game, we essentially had the exact same age players out there on the day and the exact same average game experience out there on the game. And you wouldn't look at Gold Coast and say they're an experienced team. So we're still developing. Yes, our top end talent is probably, with the exception of like a Sam Walsh, who's probably older than the rest, but you'd expect that. So for me, it's exciting things. I think as the season goes on, I don't think that this is an anomaly, what we've seen so far this year. I think as the season progresses, we've got enough data to say, for me anyway, that maybe at some point we don't get out to the 50-point leads. Maybe those 50-point leads become 30, but we probably become a lot better at sustaining them throughout the game. I just think it's a development thing and a learning thing. And it's about continuity as well, getting these players playing consistent football with each other. That's really important. You look at the backline, Pom. It's not really spoken about by anyone outside of Carlton groups, but the backline's been like pretty unsettled. We've had basically new players coming in every round. Let alone the fact that, Liam Jones isn't even on the list, but the guys who we had earmarked to replace him have only played 2 games each. So once all that settles down, I think we're going to see a more dour defense and less transition scoring from the opponent as the season progresses. So I'm really bullish on us. I'm really, really bullish on where we're at. And I'm really happy to be sitting here 4-1 heading into round 6 against Fremantle Football Club.
Spot on that. I think it's something that comes down to the leaders. Do you know what I mean? That it comes down to the leaders, and that's something that Wheatering mentioned this week. Said it, and Cripps mentioned it, saying it was a big job for him, Walshy, and Wheaters to lay a little bit of confidence into the side. Do you know what I mean? Lay a little bit of confidence into the side and bit of control. As the teams, I do believe, are filtering through. I'm just waiting for the AFL app to bring into it, but I do think a big thing, and Mick Hegan has nailed it here. We are missing a key component of transition, and that is Mitch McGovern. You've got to remember he averaged over 4 score launches and 4 intercept marks in games played, and Carlton haven't been able to replicate that. And that is something that is incredibly hard to replicate. Luke Parks had his moments this week. His kicking, though, he didn't look to be bold. That is something where leadership definitely comes into these teams. Players being willing to play their game in the face of adversity. And that is something that is obvious in the fourth quarter. Carlton stand up in the last 10 minutes, but it takes them a quarter and a half to get that bravery.
Yeah. And other podcasts and YouTubers and stuff have touched on this, but it's a lot easier to take those dangerous kicks like Mitch McGovern does, like Zach Williams does, when they know, like Adam Saad does, like when they know that they're locked into the team and they're going to be playing next week. Luke Parks comes in for his first game. He's probably nervous. He knows he's probably the first player to get dropped if he has a bad game. So it's just human nature that he tries to protect himself a little and doesn't take those damaging kicks that we've seen him do in the VFL. And I think another week in the team, I'm hoping we see him still in this team. He should start to be more adventurous with those kicks, and then we'll see a bit more of that flair, a bit more of that rebound, a bit more of that intercept game style that we know he's capable of in the reserves, but haven't seen at AFL yet.
Mate, spot on. And I think that's a big thing for me that I've enjoyed this season. I'm just waiting for the AFL. Has the AFL app updated for anyone?
Not for me. I've seen some. There are tweets flowing through about who's named and who's not, but I'd like to see the actual list.
Yeah, so we'll talk about it when we get some confirmation. But I mean, a big thing for me, and I want to see from Carlton, is really, and I've enjoyed it, is the development in their VFL side. It seems to be that there is a clear, no longer are we bringing in one player and then dropping that player the next week. There does seem to be a real continuity between you're getting a couple of weeks, which I am loving, to be honest, because I think that's going to develop these players a lot smarter than just bringing them in for a week for the sake of bringing them in for a week.
All right, the teams are up if you go to the team lineups tab on AFL.com. I'm happy to run through them, Pom, while you take a look. For the Blues, for the Blues, in one, Patrick Cripps. Out, Matthew Kennedy, Bam Bam, with general soreness, they've called it. And Paddy Dow will not be the medical sub. Or he's been dropped into the emergencies. You'd think he's probably not going to be the medical sub again. So reading through the lineup, we've got Jacob Wiedering, Zach Williams, Nick Newman in full back line, in the half back line, Adam Saad, Lewis Young, Sam Doherty on the wings, Cottrell in the middle, Hewitt, and then Nunes on the other wing. Half forward line, Matthew Owies, Jack Martin, Charlie Curnow. Full forward line, Zach Fisher, Harry Mackay, Jack Silvani. Following, Mark Pittonet, Sam Walsh, Adam Chera. On the interchange, we have Patrick Cripps, Corey Durden, Luke Parks, Will Setterfield, and the emergencies, Jordan Boyd, Paddy Dow, Tom DeConnick, and Jesse Motlop. So, slight surprise there, Pom. No, we thought Setterfield might be the one to go, but it's Matt Kennedy, and Will Setterfield will be playing his 50th game. So, a little milestone for him over in the West.
Well, I mean, it's a fairly strong team. I mean, Kennedy obviously a little bit stiff. Do you know what I mean? Which is a bit sad, isn't it? I mean, really. But I mean, Cripps coming in, obviously a huge G up for the boys. Strong side though, isn't it? Strong side. It's
a strong side on paper.
They've gone with the Jesse Motlop surprise, haven't they? They haven't thrown him in.
No, and you couldn't. They can't debut him. I hate that they count as a debut as the sub. They can't play him as the sub. I reckon they'll play maybe Jordan Boyd as the sub. I think Paddy Dow has to play footy this week. Tom DeConnick, he's not near it. I don't see why they've even named him in the emergencies. So I imagine Boyd will end up being the sub. Over in Fremantle's side though, Pom, out goes Bailey Banfield. He's dropped. Hayden Young and Heath Chapman are both out with health and safety protocols with COVID. In comes Griffin Logue and Lockie Schultz. We don't need to run through their whole list because this is a Carlton channel. We don't need to talk about Fremantle players, but some guys that I'm interested to see us come up against: Will Brodie, who's having a career best year since coming over as a salary dump from Gold Coast. Michael Walters has been named in the midfield for Fremantle, and he loves to feast on us, even though we've had the wins in the last few games. And then the obvious one is Brayshaw, who named in a forward pocket. We know he's going to play on the ball. We know he's going to be really damaging. So what do you make of it all, Pom?
Right, I mean, I like it. I mean, I'd imagine Setterfield probably is a bit lucky that the last 2 weeks has been an injury that allows him in. I do love the fact that they've kept the guys that came in last week. I'm a big fan of that because I think, for me, the worst thing this club has done is chopped and changed it every week. And that is a big annoyance for me. You know, when we bring someone in, that seems to be it. I've got the team sheet scrolling through the back, but That makes sense to me. Like, I think that's a good thing. I think the fact that they've kept Cottrell and Nunes, who did nothing wrong, do you know what I mean? Did nothing wrong at all. They were very adequate. You've got to give 2 weeks, and you only got to watch. If you watch the VFL before you make judgment of Cottrell and Nunes, you'll see the massive influence that they had on that, and they would sorely missed. And O'Brien is a great case in point. O'Brien wasn't half as good that the last 2 weeks as Cottrell and Nunes. So I think it makes sense to me. Do you know what I mean? I think it's a strong thing. People worried Cripps is on the bench. Are you worried by that?
No.
I'm more worried that Zach Williams is playing fullback if we're going by that.
yeah. If you watch how we've been naming the teams lately, we take the absolute piss. We've named Mark Pitnet on the bench. We've named like Jack Silvani in the centre. Like they just make it up and throw it. It doesn't mean anything. So Cripper on the bench, that's fine. I reckon he'll probably start on the field. I agree with you. I think, look, and we're not here to pick on Will Setterfield because if you watch the first few episodes of the season, of this show throughout the season, we thought he was doing a pretty solid job, but he's certainly dropped off. I think, once again, it's a continuity piece. You know, he's been involved in these wins. He can move to the wing. He can play on the ball if required. I think he's, as you said, he's lucky because I imagine if Matt Kennedy was fully healthy, and I think it's just general soreness, he'd be in the team instead. But all in all, I'm relatively happy. I like seeing consistency. I'm with you. Nunes and Cottrell, I mean, I watched the game and they did their job, which is all you can ask of players. I didn't understand the hate that went their way, and they maintained width, which we always talk about, Pom. They held the width on those wings. If they can do that again this week, they'll give us a chance to make an impact. And obviously, Pom, you can't drop Jack Nunes against Fremantle, because if we need someone to illegally take the kick after the siren from a dodgy downfield 50-meter penalty, he's the one I want taking it.
Mate, I'm spot with you. I mean, looking as well, we'll just touch. We've got the emergencies, Motlop, Dow, De Koning and Boyd. I'd say just for VFL form, I hope Motlop doesn't get it, because I'd hate for him to debut as a 5-minute cameo. But I would say Motlop and Boyd are probably ahead based on last week's VFL game. Boyd was very good, very brave as well. Did float into the midfield as well towards the end of the game. So I enjoy that. If Motlop, it may be, the old dodgy, someone's got a migraine, 5 minutes to go, throw him on and he might stretch the play. Whether the AFL do that or not. But let's grab your predictions, and you guys and girls in the chat, predictions for this game.
That's a tough one, Pom. Everything in my soul says we're not going to get the 5th win in a row, but I don't think I can legally tip against us on the Blue Abroad channel. So I'm going to tip us by 1 point after the siren. Let's do it again, baby.
I'm going to say, based on the first quarter last week, Carlton started to bring an outside game. So that is going to be needed this game. I'm going to go Carlton by 12 in 2 drawn quarters, and we run away with it towards the end. Carlton display a bit of dominance.
I'd love Adam Chera to just stop, because they're going to boo him all day, aren't they? So I'd love him to just run around and dominate. I'd love him to have a nice 30, kick a couple snags. That'd be beautiful.
Mate, I'm with you. And Chesney, he's got a big job today, because I don't know if you read, the Fremantle came out and pretty much said he's a disgrace.
Yeah, right.
They weren't complimentary of him. They said that there was a feeling that he kind of left them when they needed him, which I think is interesting, because Chair has always been very positive about Fremantle, so much so that he said he hopes that Carlton do the right thing and pay for him, if you remember. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be a test here for Cherrick to see if he can bring that arsehole, because genuinely teams playing your ex-teammate, they have a day out. So I think Chair is going to have a very big thing. So I'm going to stick with it. The chat seemed very positive that Carlton are fine. So I'm fine.
That's all we can ask. I mean, I'm not expecting many Carlton fans in chat to be tipping against us, to be honest. But are we going to guarantee the win, Pom? That's the question. That's what everyone's here to find out.
Oh, fuck me. I don't know if I can guarantee a win on this one, because I've got to say, on this one, it's probably the least confident I've been 60-40. I'm still confident, but I'm 60-40. I will say this, though. Carlton are guaranteed a win if they play their game. If Carlton do what I think they're capable of doing, which they did against every team, they've imposed their game plan, they'll be all right. So if Carlton impose it, they're fine.
All right, I'll guarantee the win.
Oh,
lock it in, baby.
I'll put a caveat. Brah.
I guaranteed the last one I guaranteed was Gold Coast. So
he's cursed. If we lose this, Lapdog's cursed.
No, it's bloody beautiful. I'm excited to watch it. It's going to be a good game. Let's hope Harry kicks 10 and we have a laugh at how much we smashed him by.
Mate, it's going to be a tough one. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be a tough one. And as Andrew says, Fremantle have only beaten Mickey Mouse sides. Do you know what I mean? They've only beaten Mickey Mouse sides. They haven't played a football inside yet. Well, that is all from the beautiful Lapdog and myself. But I will say, please come and join us on Saturday, 7 o'clock, 7:30. I'll be live to take you through the watch along for all those. I expect a big one because no one can get there because it's too expensive to fly. So come and say hello. Come and hang out. We sing some songs. Lapdog can be found. Jock Reynolds, his Twitter's pretty good as well. Just type #SleeveWatch. You'll find him. But also the Jock Reynolds contest. Do you know what I mean? Jock Reynolds podcast. We'll be back next week. Much love, everyone. Go Blues and have a ripper week.
Go Blues. Up the baggers.
Go to baggers.